you're a middle manager who looks after your team, you may recognize this. Pressure comes from above, from senior management. You absorb it, handle it yourself before it reaches your team because you want to protect them. It may look like good leadership, and maybe sometimes it is, but protecting your team and carrying their problems are two different things. The team stays comfortable for a while, you end up tired, unrecognized, stuck in your career, and often blamed later anyway. In this video, I'm going to talk about how protecting your team can sometimes turn into an unhealthy pattern called rescuing, and how that can sabotage your future career as a leader. What rescuing your team actually looks like. And by the way, when I say rescue, I mean it in this specific context. I don't mean saving or rescuing others in a bad thing. I'm talking about a very specific behavior. For example, when you take over a problem that belongs to someone on your team, you correct the mistake yourself instead of letting them deal with it once. That is a form of rescuing. Or you make the decision on their behalf, decision that was supposed to be made by them because it is faster. Or you hold back information to protect them from whatever that is supposed to happen to them. Or you micromanage to have full control over the process so they can never take full responsibility for any risk, and that lands on you. I'm guilty of all of that. All of us will go through this. This is not about judging, but these behaviors, if they done too much on the long term, they can really damage our careers. From the outside, every one of these look like good behavior or good leadership. And it's not that helping is a problem, but this specific way of helping takes a decision out of your team's hands. They do not get to grow. They do not get to learn to become resourceful. Responsibility gets blurry, and you end up responsible for outcomes you cannot control. Most psychological models describe what's happening inside a person. If you talk to a coach or therapist, you will face a lot of different models that help us understand the situation better. They simplify the situation. And most of these models, they're about what happens inside a person. But transactional analysis is a model that describes what is happening between two people or more than one people in transactions or interactions. That's why it's called transactional analysis. And one person does something, another responds, and then we have like a situation. And of course, like every other model, it has limitation, but it is super helpful in decoding organizational work relationships, business relationships, because in business, career, work settings, it's not just about our mindset and our personality, our inner world. It's about who we are in relation to others, what happens in the interactions. And it could be that you are like a very calm person at home or among your friends, and you have like you show up a certain way, but at work you're a very different person because of the relationships and how others are treating you. So this is why I love this method. This method was built by Eric Berne. He was a psychiatrist working in California in the 60s. So it is an old model. And one of his students called Stefan Karpman, he came up with this model within this method, drama triangle. And we're going to use it to describe the situation of rescuing. The drama triangle at work explained. So by drama in this context, we do not mean like drama queen or loud, excessive, or attention-seeking behavior. Not at all, not that kind of drama. This can be actually a very hidden and quiet interaction. Drama in this case is meant in the theater sense, where we have roles, a script, a scene that plays out, and actors who are cast for a specific role. So drama means theater. And Karpman, the guy who came up with this model, noticed that the stories which have survived for centuries, all these sort of old fairy tales, they almost all run on the same three characters or roles. There is always a rescuer, there is always a victim, and there is always a persecutor. Like little Red Riding Hood, that girl who cannot save herself, the wolf who threatens her. I don't know, somebody comes and helps her. I don't remember the full story, but there is someone who comes to help. And we have Cinderella is pretty much the same situation. A girl is almost a victim, someone comes and helps her, and there are those stepsisters that are very badly behaved and not treating her nicely. Hansel and Gretel, all of these old stories, they all based on these three roles. And I love how it makes sense for work situations, because we are playing roles there too: the role of a leader, the role of a teacher, role of a contributor. At work, we are basically taking on these roles. And Cartman drew it as a triangle because the three roles are connected. And nobody occupies one role for long, and each role somehow creates the other. Like the rescuer role only exists if someone else is being less capable than they actually are, the victim. So they rescue them, they rescue the victim. And the victim is put in this situation by the bad guy, the persecutor. So these three roles, they kind of create each other. The moment the other person handles the thing themselves, they empower themselves, there is no rescuer because there is nothing to rescue. Each position depends on someone occupying another corner. So these are not personality types. Each role carries some like unsaid, unspoken expectations. For example, when someone takes over the rescue role, it means that they're saying, I saved the victim and I'm the hero. And in return, I matter here. This is the role a lot of these team leaders I was talking about take on. The victim is subconsciously saying that I stay unable, and in return, I'm not held responsible. I need to be safe. Persecutor is subconsciously communicating this message that I use my power to apply pressure, and in return, I stay in the right, I stay in power. And why rescue behavior is unhealthy. In the transactional analysis model, the rescuer role is considered problematic because it discounts the other person's capacity to think. Transactional analysis is always based on the idea that everybody has come from capacity, because we are dealing with adults here. Everybody is an adult. Everybody is able to think, decide, and act for themselves. And I think this especially makes sense for work, because everybody in your team is probably a manager or expert who at some point has been interviewed, they've been vetted for their roles, they have some kind of expertise. So this is not a kindergarten. They're like adults with expertise and knowledge and capability. They're able to make decisions. They are qualified to do their jobs. They've been interviewed for it. So when you underestimate their capacity or capability to work, it communicates, subconsciously, of course, to them that you're not capable of handling this, so I must do it for you. And, as someone who's done a lot of micromanaging, I'm so guilty of that. Very often I thought like, oh, this team member is young, they're not inexperienced, I'm going to take care of it myself. This is not healthy. And this is the central idea of discounting, treating someone's capacity, choices, or resources as less significant than they really are. The rescuer discounts the other person's ability to think and act independently. And another form of unhealthy rescue is that you shield, you protect others, your team, from all consequences. And this overly protective behavior is rescuing. Or you take all the responsibility yourself. But in this situation, they also should be able to accept appropriate consequences. Being the unhealthy rescuer is exhausting. You will be doing more than you're supposed to do. You will be compromising your own free time and your own rest time. And that is another path to burnout. A lot of people who burn out are doing too much of what they are not even supposed to do. They are caring too much about things they should not care about, or things senior management does not care about. And if you do this over time, it creates overload, it creates emotional fatigue, and it leads to a sense of being unrecognized, of not being seen and valued for what you're actually doing. You'll be doing a lot of invisible work when you're in this unhealthy rescue role, and this creates a lot of resentment. You will start to also hate everyone around you or hate the environment because you feel they're betraying you or they're not seeing your value. And I've especially seen this pattern among my female clients who proudly tell me, I'm my team's mother. I earlier talked about it, describing the protective behavior, protective of their jobs, protective of their well-being, protective of their performance. They're like this mother who's taking care of their kids in the team. Women do a lot of invisible work anyway that creates mental load, and no one sees that work. This role is like a lot of us women we just take on without even thinking about it. And that creates a lot of fatigue and exhaustion. Having said all of that, this unhealthy rescue behavior comes from a good place. It is often driven by positive values of kindness, humanity, compassion, but you might do it because you want to feel needed, or you want to avoid conflict. You want to avoid the anxiety of watching someone else struggle or see their big emotions, because it is hard for you to see that. You might want to maintain an identity as a competent one. We grew up with these stories of heroes who rescue everyone, and we want to be a hero for others. So this comes from a good place, but it doesn't always end up well. Sometimes you want to avoid the exposure of your own vulnerability, so you rescue everyone, and so you don't have to accept yourself. And sometimes people do it to preserve harmony, like one of my clients I talked about earlier. Sometimes to just keep some sort of balance. The person in the rescuer role receives some praise and gratitude, and everyone thanks them. They feel legitimate. They get a love from their team, of course, doing the rescuing. So on the surface, it looks very good. The manager who's rescuing everyone might come across as selfless, and that is a virtue everybody praises. We love selfless people. So it is received very positively. We do it because we're going to be liked. It's a form of people pleasing. And in these situations, there are two questions I ask in coaching. When I have a client going through this and I suspect one of these patterns, they describe a situation, I feel like they're going through this either career challenge or communication challenge because they have been too overprotective and they've been rescuing their team too much, I would ask, what becomes possible for you when you are the person who saves everyone? And when I ask this question, at first they get really excited and they think it is a good thing. They proudly share all the reasons. But then it becomes clear, like, oh, that's why you've been doing all these sacrifices. Or sometimes I would ask, how would it feel for you to see a team member struggle without you immediately intervening? And this is a very hard situation to watch for most people. It is very tempting to intervene when we see like a team member being sad, being upset, being frustrated. You probably it's hard for most of us humans out of empathy to watch someone in their suffering. And I personally spent most of my professional life being that rescuer, hero, manager, and I got a lot of praise for it. But at some point, it created serious problems, and I got a lot of coaching support, and this pattern became clear for me that I'm one of those empath people who feel all the emotions in the room. I feel everything basically in my own body, and big, loud emotions, they are very hard for me to experience. Of course, as a coach, I've been exposed to a lot of it. But for example, in the past, if someone was screaming in front of me, if someone like a team member would come to me crying, I felt like, oh, I have to stop them from crying. That was my instinct back then, because crying is a big emotion. It's scary for me to experience it. So for me, it's also very hard to be in a situation knowing someone is struggling and I can help them and I'm not helping them. But sometimes it is important to give everyone the dignity to learn how to solve their own problems, and also the dignity to feel their emotions the way they want to feel their emotions. Everybody is entitled to their emotions, and we cannot control everything. Of course, you have to evaluate when you need to intervene. It is important to see through that part of your nature, that why are you intervening? Is it just because of the emotion, or is it something serious to manage? I'll share an example for you. Because I worked in supply chain management, I have clients who work in this world. A lot of the examples I share are somehow coming from sourcing, supplier relationship, supply chain management. So when you're a sourcing team leader, You need a team of sourcing managers, maybe, or logistic managers or procurement managers. A sourcing manager is usually responsible for negotiating prices and terms with different suppliers. These negotiations are very important. They could save hundreds of thousands of dollars or even millions in large corporations. And these are relatively high stake meetings with business partners. So the team leader have to decide for each of these sourcing managers who have their own range of suppliers to sort of to negotiate with, which suppliers are higher stake. I want to be personally part of those negotiations, but if I'm the team leader, but I would ask, in what situations do I want to back off a little and let my sourcing manager team members, who are also very capable, go through the negotiations themselves. By being part of some negotiations, you make sure they watch you, they learn how you do it. You're also kind of more in control of high stake situation. You set the strategy. You need to give them the opportunity to learn. And then you also want to make sure that they have the option to do it on their own. Otherwise, as a sourcing team leader, you have to go to, I don't know, 20, 30, depending on how many suppliers the company is managing or what the business is. And that is a hell of a lot of meetings, and you probably have a lot of other things to do. So it is about finding the right balance on when to intervene and when to back off so they can do it themselves and be responsible for the consequences. So when intervention is genuinely your job. Having said all of that, in no way do I mean that intervention has to be avoided. Sometimes intervention is appropriate and important. And not every intervention is rescue. You should act directly when there is safety, legal, ethical, safeguarding issues, or when your team member lacks the authority to act, or they need your authority, or otherwise you will put them in a very complex situation if you do not support them. If there are cases of bullying, discrimination, or abusive treatment, that is very clear. You have to intervene. If there is a critical business risk that requires immediate action, of course you have to intervene. If you have an employee who is genuinely incapacitated or in crisis, of course you have to intervene. And all managers have formal responsibilities that cannot be delegated. So it's not that all intervention is bad. You need to be clear about the boundaries, to what level you are going to intervene, and from what point intervention just compromises the capacity and becomes this unhealthy rescuing thing. This is something to reflect on. It's something that partially comes with experience, but also is worth talking to mentors or other colleagues in the organization you trust. It's a very good question to ask. What is the minimum intervention required to restore safety, clarity, or capacity? Especially if you're a new manager, you're leading a team for the first time, or you're new in an organization, you want to clear about this, because very often first-time managers tend to want to have more control, micromanage, because they lack a lot of leadership skills and confidence, and that can burn you out. If you want to learn more about how I support my clients in their transition to a new leadership role, book a call with me and we can look into it. In the next video, I will show you how to transform the unhealthy rescue pattern into an empowering form of support as a leader. See you soon.